Hello, Mate to Thrive Nation. It's all about food addiction and comfort eating and just the psychology of food from one of the world's experts who got an incredible story. And she's a registered dietitian, just a licensed dietitian and nutritionist, and she's functional medicine expert. Brilliant, brilliant Instagram page that we'll put a link to. It's a real privilege and honor to welcome Jillian Acosta to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, brilliant. Let's talk about the crisis, and we're speaking offline, just what's happening with food in terms of people comfort eating more and more and the food addiction that's happening out there. Maybe you can sort of give us a macro view of what's happening in the States or worldwide, because it just seems, I've been in practice 25 years, that people, unfortunately, are using this drug, and I call it a drug specifically, more and more.
Yes, I honestly couldn't agree more. I really believe that the root of any addiction is pain, quite frankly. And this is the work of Dr. Gabor Mate and many other experts in the field. And it's like pain is really the root. And why the pain? In my perspective, it's childhood trauma and a lack of support in the emotional regulation, nervous system regulation of such trauma that has us seeking outside of ourselves later in life. And so in my perspective, food is probably the most abused substance in the world. It's depicted in media and culture, and a woman breaks up with a boyfriend and she's eating a pint of ice cream, like it's all over the place. And so, yeah, it's the most abused substance in the world. And ultimately, I believe that people are really just trying to self-soothe. I see someone who's carrying excess weight, and I want to know what their story is. I want to know what happened and why they're carrying such pain, and trying to medicate. So yeah, it stems into obesity, and we can talk about the expression of it, and of course chronic illnesses like hypertension, diabetes, certain cancers. But ultimately, I believe that the root cause is adverse childhood experiences, trauma.
Okay, so Gabor Mate, who I'd love to have on the show, so maybe we can speak offline, and I don't know if you've got any context there, but he's a pretty big hero. Wrote the Myth of Normal, which is one of my favorite books. But he says trauma is not what happens to you, it happens inside of you. So maybe you want to speak about that in that Greek word trauma or trauma, which means wound, and maybe you can just unpack that with regards, because some people get traumatized later in life as a teenager or even a young adult, and then they form a wound inside of them, which then causes this pain, like you said, and then they want to soothe that pain.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I love that. I think there are two primary concerns with trauma. The first really is like the physiological impact, how dysregulated the nervous system becomes, how fundamentally, physiologically, neurologically, psychologically, on every front, we are altered. The decisions that we make about ourselves are really like one of the main problems I see. But physiologically, there's an impact of trauma, and then the other primary concern with it is like the long-term impacts of what we do to try to compensate for the physiological imbalance. So again, it's these mechanisms of trying to self-soothe, trying to regulate our dysregulated systems. As you know, no creature in nature can survive in a sympathetic state perpetually. They'll die. They have mechanisms to alter their internal landscape and bring them back into a parasympathetic state for survival. They're seeking homeostasis, and we are no different than that. We just don't have that same mechanism anymore. We've evolved out of the kind of the shaking it off and kind of coming back to grazing on the grass. We don't have that, so we're seeking that. And we seek that in things like food and in drugs and substances and sex and all these other things. But ultimately, that's what we're seeking. And so, the dysregulation of the nervous system and the mineral depletion and the nutrient deficiencies and the chronic, headaches and gut issues and all the things that are on the physiological side, that's one huge impact or ramification of trauma. And I'll unpack trauma in a second, but then it's like all the ways that we're trying to cope, all the ways that we're trying to like find balance in like really kind of counterproductive ways, and how that leads to illness and disease later in life, are two of like what I see to be like the main issues with trauma. And then of course trauma is like, it's not what happens maybe in the moment, it's what happens in the wake of an event. So again, like the decisions that we make about ourselves, I'm happy to share my story, but like some of the decisions I made about myself are that I'm not worthy of love. I'm not lovable. I'm not likable. I'm disgusting. Like I'm shameful. All of these things that those decisions were buried so deeply in the psyche and the subconscious mind. I didn't even know I was playing that out in my day-to-day life. And then of course that impacts the way that I see myself, speak to myself, treat myself, feed myself, interact with other people. Like it covers everything. And so it's a byproduct of trauma. And, many people are like, oh, my parents were really loving. I didn't experience anything bad. They did the best they could. Like I hear that all the time, but then it's like, well, you're carrying, upwards of 50 pounds of excess weight potentially. And that's not even like the only metric, but it's like, clearly there's a discrepancy in the way that you're caring for yourself. Clearly there's something that is, yeah, altering and kind of inhibiting a loving relationship with the self. And so what's that? What is that? Let's unpack
Mhm.
that, right? Because trauma doesn't have to look like one catastrophic event, like, sexual abuse or the death of a parent or divorce. It could look like, humiliation in class as a young child. It could
Yeah.
look like being ostracized from your peers. And it's like little T trauma versus big T trauma. Both of them are absolutely impactful on the psyche and on the self and in life.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was kind of like a
No,
long-winded.
absolutely incredible. And I think well framed from a physiological and a psychological point of view, how we deal with the physiology and the psychology in terms of the self-talk we have. You say, I'm not worthy enough, or I'm not good enough. I had that. My parents came from Cyprus. I was extremely like this Mediterranean kid with a lot of hair and was teased, and I wasn't good enough, and I didn't look
Yeah.
like everybody else. I didn't speak like everyone else. And then I did go to food, which caused problems. But maybe you can answer this question, because I've got three ladies in my life. I've got a beautiful wife of 24 years, been married, Helen. But then I've got three other ladies in my life that I relate to very closely, and one is Candace. And we have an intimate time every single morning. And Candace is my coffee, and it's someone that I really look forward to. And on a Friday night, when I let my hair down, I've got Carly, and Carly is a bag of chips, crisps that we call here in South Africa. And I wait for Carly on a Friday night. And then I got Chelsea, and Chelsea's my chocolate and my dark chocolate that I wait for. And the reason I've given them names is because we've got a relationship to coffee, we've got a relationship to food. We don't realize it, but when we name that food or that process, it gives us a greater understanding of relationship. So I'm someone who almost has, and I'm going through a difficult time with my mom who's very sick, but I've gone to, Chelsea more and more every single night. I'm having dark chocolate every single morning. I'm looking forward to my coffee, how many
Yes.
units I can have. And then on a Friday night,
Yes.
I've restricted. So aren't we all really addicted in this crazy world to something that soothes the distress in our lives or the imbalance in our lives that's causing us problems living on, this side of eternity?
Oh, I love this so much. There's two really important things. The word and the concept of addiction is one. And then the second one is that you've personified these food and beverages. And interestingly enough, they're all female, they're all feminine, which I really love because, in my perspective, there's a massive tie with emotional eating and the mother wound.
Yeah.
The wound, an interesting dynamic, an emotionally charged dynamic with the mother. This is the work of Kelly McDaniel. I love her stuff. She has an amazing book called Mother Hunger. You might want to bring her on your show. She's incredible. And food is very feminine. It comes from the breast of the mother. It comes from Mother Earth. When we have a wound with the mother, essentially what she says in her work is there's an absence of nurturance, protection, and guidance when we were young. And it's not because the mothers are bad. It's because maybe the mothers are working 3 jobs to try to keep everybody stable. Maybe the mother is physically or emotionally incapable of providing those kinds of loving spaces for the child. Maybe the mother is not present physically and was ill, or potentially, yeah, fatalities or whatever it is, like there, it doesn't negate the need for the loving, comforting, soothing, warm, delicious feeling we get in the arms of the mother. It's biology. And not to mention the chemical cascade that is running through both mother and baby when baby is being breastfed, the oxytocin and the endorphins and that all the yumminess that bonds us, promotes, lactation and all the things, but it's bonding and it's love ultimately. And it's no coincidence that that love feeling is happening while we are eating. It's while we're being fed as children. And so really neurons that fire together, wire together. In my perspective, like I saw in a psychedelic experience, the cross wiring of everything in my life when I was an infant felt dangerous on an energetic level. My mother was in high stress, survival mode when I was in the womb and out of the womb. My father wasn't present. She was managing, she was in survival. She had her own unprocessed trauma. And so cortisol was surging through her veins at baseline, except when she was breastfeeding me. And then all of a sudden she was soothed and then I was soothed. And it happened to be while I was eating. And so I learned at a very, very young age in infancy, the imprint was food equals safety. Food equals love, food equals safety, food equals I'm okay, I'm no longer in danger. And so obviously, my relationship with food spun into a full-blown eating disorder. And that was the only tool I had in my toolbox to try to create safety for myself, AKA homeostasis. And so the mother wound, the lack of nurturance, my mom wasn't nurtured when she was a child by her mother and all the way up the line, right? And so she didn't necessarily have that to give, except when we were both engaging in this moment of feeding and biology took over. But I didn't have that yummy, gooey, let me hold you while you cry kind of mom. I do now. She's done a lot of work and she's actually here visiting me, and it's been really, really beautiful. But we've both put in a lot of work into ourselves and our relationship, which has been really healing. But that primary wound with the mother is what I believe to be the thing, one of the primary things that really puts us on the path of emotional eating. Many other people struggle with substance abuse, but maybe they don't reach for food. Maybe they reach for, cocaine or alcohol. It's a different flavor, a different texture of wounding that I think creates a propensity to reach for food. And that has a lot to do with the mother. So
Okay, so maybe yeah, that's good. I mean, and obviously that was your case, and it's possibly many people's case out there with the mother. Maybe the mother, like, not there when you need it. So I think, I was lean. I didn't have any problems with food till I was 6. And then when I went to school and I got teased and I got mocked, and it was a really tough time for me. I didn't speak English like the rest of them. And so then I came home and possibly my mother wasn't there. Or
yeah,
just being a Greek family is you celebrate with food. When you're depressed, you eat food. Food is the answer to everything. And so
right.
that became a habit out of the trauma that I was, struggling with at school.
For sure. For sure. The other concept that you mentioned was addiction.
Yeah.
And it's tricky because I don't want to negate anybody's experience. If they identify with that, then like that's their process and that's beautiful. And it's not like I know better. But my personal perspective is that the title and the identification of addiction, it strips us of a lot of our power. I definitely experienced feelings of being addicted. I've done weird things with food, such as leave my house in the middle of the night, go to a 24-hour gas station and buy crap just to like get my fix. Like in the worst of in my days with bulimia and binge eating disorder, that was very much my expression. And I went to treatment and I relapsed and I went to treatment again. And kind of coming out of that, it was just a massive expression of pain and a place in which I got to kind of channel that pain, and in many ways served me as as I said, a vehicle to like hold that level of intensity and pain while I was navigating life. And I don't subscribe to the word addict for myself. It doesn't
Mm,
allow me the possibility of anything different when I really identify as that. And what's been really beautiful is that I mean, I do not live there anymore. Like that is not my experience of life. And so I've figured out a way out, and you know, that's what I do now. I help a lot of people out of those spaces. And so if I slap them with the label of you're an addict, it strips us of a lot of possibility. It's just pain. It's just so much pain. And when we learn how to work with this pain as like kind of the fertile, mineral rich compost, quite frankly, to help us grow out of that space, it's magical and divine, and in many ways creates this desire to serve others and help people, you know, out of this path. We're both in the space of service, and you know, I've got a lot of compost.
Got you. Got
So
you.
that's my perspective.
But maybe there's a difference between a harmful user and an addict. Like if you take you know, an alcoholic or someone who's addicted to cocaine, to sort of look at the pain triggers or the trauma and then let them use it socially. I don't know if we would do that. That would be possibly difficult. So same with the food,
Agreed.
is like if we let them just do whatever they want, there's a physiological or brain disease addiction
Yeah,
there. So one has to look inner and do the work and maybe use plant medicine, which we'll talk about. But if you just carry on using the drug, it's going to be quite difficult to break that enslavement. Do you think, Jillian?
absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, you definitely have to, I'd say, like, treat your situation as if you're an addict, but don't identify with
Yes,
you being
yes,
an
yes,
addict, if
yes.
that makes
I
sense. You
got
know,
you.
like, change your social circles,
Mm,
remove yourself from the environment that perpetuates the addiction,
mm.
and stop labeling yourself as the addict, you know?
I got you, because at the end of the day, I'm not an addict, but I might have an addiction. So my self-worth and my identity is not that I am an addict, you know, and I think that
Yes.
is a difference. And internal family systems has really, really helped me with that, because we've got different parts of us
Yeah.
and different parts of us.
Big fan.
So characteristics and manifestations, and that doesn't mean that's who we are from an identity perspective. So
Yes.
I think that's important. I don't know if you've got any feedback on the psychology other than looking at pain and looking at trauma and trying to work that out. But the psychology of people using food is quite interesting and quite fascinating because it's so freely available.
Yeah. There was a study that basically identified, and it was like on, I think it was like around almost 800 participants with self-reported binge eating disorder, and they were able to basically delineate the major reasons why one would engage in binge eating. And it was like control, which I'll touch on in a second, to create numbness and dissociation, emotional regulation, emotional suppression, hedonic hunger. I'm missing a few, but basically it was like, here are the main drivers why one would engage. And sometimes there are multiple, but the 75% of them reported numbness and dissociation and hedonic like pleasure, hedonic hunger. And so interestingly, and this study was, and I should have probably reviewed it before I came on the show, but from my recollection, they were able to attribute why one would engage in particular like expressions of emotional eating and the corresponding adverse childhood experiences that they had gone through.
Wow.
And it was, yeah, it was really, really fascinating. And so sexual abuse obviously was massive. Um, Emotional neglect was the number one that had them reaching for these things. And emotional neglect is so interesting because here we are with big, huge emotions as children, without the loving presence of a caretaker to help us kind of sift through and move through in a healthy way, a big emotional moment. And so emotional neglect is like being alone in the processing of a major experience. And not only are you alone in the processing of an emotional experience, but then on top of that, you get this like heaping scoop of like aloneness and shame and like I'm unsupported. I must be whatever the you know decisions are, but maybe I'm bad.
Yeah.
You know, every time I got angry, I got punished and sent to my room. So it was like on top of the anger, now all of a sudden I was being ostracized and I was being like punished, and I must be bad for my anger. And this is not okay to feel. And I should suppress this if I want to get love, because I want love from my caretakers because I'm a child and that's how I survive. But now this is not okay. So now who do I have to be in order to get love? Not angry. Let me push my anger down, you know? And it's like, it's all of that. It's so jumbled, it's so complex, but it's just these layers of decisions we make about ourselves for who we have to be in the world to get love and to avoid pain. And, you know, one of the things that I believe many things when it comes to food, but like when I'm working with a client and I'm helping them mostly on an experiential level, my work is beyond the concept. We talk, but I'm really bringing them into their bodies and allowing them an opportunity to feel what something feels like, because many of us who struggle with food or other substances have a pattern of dissociation. We've used food as a mechanism to disconnect from our internal experience. It's not safe to feel. I'm not allowed to feel. It's uncomfortable to feel. So I'm going to reach outside of myself and push it down. I can't deal with this right now. Right. And so I ask these two primary questions, or I guide with these two primary questions when someone is in an activated state. And it's like, what am I trying not to feel? What am I unwilling to feel? And then what that helps us access is what's the need that's really wanting to be met in this moment. And so maybe I'm trying not to feel anger. It's uncomfortable. I have a negative relationship with my anger because it wasn't okay for me to feel, or I've been called crazy, or whatever the expression is. So I have this like feeling of rage, but I'm not allowed to feel it, and I'm trying not to feel it. So I'm going to use food to push it down. So identifying that. And then what am I really needing? I need a safe space to express. I need permission. I need a pillow to scream in. Like what's the need underneath that really wants to be met? And then from that space, so much becomes accessible. There's a whole somatic experience that kind of comes online, but so much becomes accessible in the understanding that many of us use food to disconnect from our internal experience, because when we were children, it wasn't safe to feel. And, you know, the biggest travesty, I think, is that we're here having human experiences and all of us are trying so hard to avoid it. We're trying not to feel.
So really what you're saying is your community and the people that can hold space in a very safe way, that safe space is crucially important in this world, from when you're a baby to as you're growing up to an adult. Is we've lost connection, we've lost safe community around us for people to accept us for who we are.
Yes, and I believe that everything is a direct reflection of the relationship we have with ourselves. And so in order to allow ourselves to be seen or held or supported in safe community, there's a degree of safety that must be created internally first. And so my work is really based, yes, I'm a dietitian and I help support the physiology and the relationship with food and all the things. But what I'm really doing, if I had to kind of sum my work, my message up into one sentence, it's that I help create or cultivate safety within each person to feel. Because I believe if they feel safe enough to feel whatever emotion is alive, they no longer need anything to numb said feeling. And the physiology changes rapidly.
So it's the community within, you know, it's your spirit and your soul. If you've got a safe place to be who you need to be and express yourself in that space, then if you're safe within, then you propagate a signal that draws safety towards yourself.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
brilliant. So tell me now, you know, I've never missed a day's work in 25 years, you know, no sick note taken, you know, performed at a very high level and ultra marathons and lectured over 12,000 medical professionals. And I'm not saying this to boast, but I've got a problem with Candace. You know, I think of Candace often in the morning. There's not many days. I actually can't count in the last, I don't know how many years that I haven't missed Candace in the morning. So, and Carly's a pretty, you know, on Friday nights, and then definitely Chelsea from a dark chocolate perspective. And I've condoned it in that it's dark chocolate and it's 85% learned or 78% learned, but I'd go above and beyond to make sure that it's there. I go above and beyond to make sure, you know, that my coffee is there. So let's take a scenario now where you would start with someone like myself who's you know, physically, mentally, emotionally, I think, and spiritually on a good journey, and obviously always growing and always developing. But let's start with your process, Jillian.
Well, so refresh my memory. So the coffee Coffee's Candace, yeah?
Coffee's Candace, yeah, and then Chelsea's the chocolate, the dark
Chelsea.
chocolate, and I can tell you it's 78% and it's 85%. And
Sure.
then if I'm having a tough time, then I'm going to go to like, I like Lindt, and then I'm going to have the sea salt, and I'm going to have the mint, and I'll let go. And then on a Sunday, sometimes I'll let go if I'm having a tough time. So food as a Greek person growing up has been a big deal. And our folks just loved us with food, and when we were depressed, we had food. So there is that
Yeah.
connection, but I seem to be pretty functional. So, but I don't want to be sort of enslaved to that. Just sort of, how would you
That's
do
what I
this?
was
Would you
going
do
to ask.
functional medicine tests? Would you look within? Would you break the habit? Let's go through a sort of process.
Yeah, I love this. So, I mean, my process always begins with an intake conversation, really. And it's just like, tell me what your relationship with food has looked like.
Mm,
Tell me kind of what I'm really looking for. Number one is, it's kind of hilarious how I say it, but I'm looking for a hunger for liberation from these patterns. I'm looking for someone who is willing to look at things that may be challenging, and also willing to kind of feel the things that maybe they have historically suppressed because they're challenging and uncomfortable. And so, my work, the name of my practice is the root cause method, because we are really digging in the roots. And that's why I incorporate the use of psychedelics into my work, because it is in the subconscious realm in which we venture. And so I'm looking for a willingness and a desire to really free themselves from this pattern. And so in that intake, I would ask things like, chocolate isn't inherently bad. Nothing is really inherently bad, of course. And so do you feel a loss of control around this food, is what I would really want to know.
mm. Yeah, look, I think what it does is it sort of, I get the sense of like contentment. Not that I'm a discontented person, I've done over like 140,000, sessions and treatments, but there's just something that feels good. It gives me a feel good kick, knowing that I
Sure.
can have that after dinner, that dark chocolate, then condoning the fact that it's not got too much sugar and it's okay. And, I'm in
Yeah.
health and I'm in wellness, and I'm not Carly, the chips. I can destroy the whole big bag on a Friday just because I can just say, I've worked so hard. I've seen so many patients, clients who are doing this corporate
Yeah.
work. But so that's like my treat now. So my treat that I look forward to is like this big bag of chips or crisps. So yeah, I don't know. I
Yeah.
just
So
feel good afterwards.
that would be, this is interesting. So, you know, food is a particular substance that I find so fascinating, because if this was like, alcohol, and there was a sense of out of control, or it's, destructive by its very nature,
Mm,
it can be, aside from like a beautiful glass of wine and, once in a while, like, food is an interesting substance because we can't omit it. We
yeah.
must learn to dance with it, and therefore we must learn to find balance with it. And so my perspective is such that I don't believe in rigidity. I don't put people on strict diets or meal plans. No, and I also don't subscribe to like just figure out how to eat intuitively, because when you have a dysfunctional relationship, you don't have access to intuition around food. You maybe not don't have access to hunger and fullness cues, and physiological like signaling from the body. And so it really takes like a level of embodiment to deeply feel, okay, how is this, do I have a healthy relationship with this right now? I also have dark chocolate every day of my life. It is exactly as you described, 78, 80%, 85% when I'm in the mood, with some sea salt, fair trade, delicious, nothing, like it's a beautiful thing, and it brings joy to my soul. Like I just have this but reverence with it, and I savor it, and I take my time with it, and I'm
Mm,
not mindlessly eating it. I'm not, downing it in like two bites and two gulps or whatever. Like I have a relationship with it,
yeah.
and and that for me feels beautiful, because one of the things, we're not just souls, we're not just this like, beautiful like kind of consciousness, we're embodied. And when we're embodied, meaning we have access to senses, and one of the beautiful things about a human experience is that we get to engage from a sensation standpoint with our environment. And so to savor the chocolate and to have a pleasurable experience with it is beautiful. Now, if you're inhaling the chocolate bar and once you're done with that, you go for the second one and you feel this loss of control, and maybe you eat to the point of discomfort, and maybe you enter into a cycle of like shame or loathing, self-deprecation after said chocolate, then yeah, I would want to unpack that, because that to me implies that there's an emotional charge around this food that is disempowering and dissociating, and really is the doorway for a lot of freedom and liberation. It's like, what are you really being called for? There's an opportunity of reconnection to the self. There's an opportunity to find ways to soothe yourself in ways that deeply empower you and reconnect you to yourself. One of the things I really believe is that when we are stuffing down things with food, what we're stuffing is our truth, the truth in the moment of how we feel. We're stuffing down maybe elements of our story, like, I'm not allowed to feel this. We're stuffing down our power. When human beings are not in their body because of dissociation, we don't have access to intuition. We don't have access to the absolutely incredible amounts of ancient wisdom that is stored in the human body. We lose access. And so that's why I'm so charged up about this work. Is like, yes, I want to help people prevent chronic illness and go into remission from illness and live in their most amazing optimized bodies. But it's really because on a spiritual level, we need to be in our bodies, because that's how we're able to be in our hearts. That's how we're able to have empathy and compassion and love and support for each other, ourselves, also this planet. Like, if we're disembodied and we're numb, we don't care if the thing burns down. We're just disconnected from ourselves and everything else. So it's like, who cares if I'm rude to my neighbor? Like, and that's not the world I desire to live in. I would just believe there's something else that's possible. And so, yeah, my doorway is food, but I'm really here for a lot more.
Brilliant. Brilliant. So you're talking more about mindful eating. If I had to just look at it and say, okay, my chocolate tonight, do it slow, savor the moment, enjoy it without sort of stuffing it and trying to suppress something
Yeah.
or trying to
Yeah.
cover something. Is that what you're saying? Because, I always think having this dark chocolate, and even though it's got sugar in, and having it every day, it's not a good thing. So I need to be able to say no quite easily, but possibly it's being more mindful when I am having it.
I like the concept of mindful eating, yes, but what I really, really love is like embodied eating. You're in your body. You are having a sensory experience with what's happening externally with this chocolate, but also mostly what's happening internally. I often lead these practices in either retreat settings or one-on-one with my clients, of like really slowing down when we're experiencing food to see like what's just beneath the surface in terms of like automatic tendencies. What are the racing thoughts that are like, I need more, I need more? What is happening energetically in the body? Are you noticing like, this kind of compulsive energy in your system, or this contraction in your throat or your chest, and this like impulse for more? And or what's going on energetically, physiologically, somatically? It's really like bringing people into the somatic experience while they're eating. And just underneath the surface of the automatic patterns is so much data. It's so much insight of like your personal experience, your personal patterns, nuances of like how you engage with food, it's just reveals so much. And so we explore that. And we trace it back to like, what was that like for you? When did this pattern come online? Right. And maybe within that space, you get to give yourself permission of like, yeah, you know what, this how I engage with, I forgot, Kali chocolate, right? Or Candid.
Yeah, no, Chelsea's the chocolate, Carly is
Oh,
the chip.
Kelsey. How you engage with Chelsea like may actually be a healthy dynamic. It may actually serve you, and you get to give yourself the permission to like really enjoy that, and that gets to be okay. And then maybe Kali, you notice that there is an emotional charge and maybe kind of a dysfunctional relationship where you can't just have a few, but you feel this compulsive, she yells at you from the pantry, and you feel like you have no choice, and you find yourself entering into a space of disempowerment and self-loathing after you've completed the bag. So it's like, let's unpack that. What are you not wanting to feel, or what are you trying to feel? right? You just worked all week and you want to give yourself a treat. What is another way that you could treat yourself that after the event you feel empowered, you feel more embodied, you feel, like you've done something good for yourself instead of something depleting and kind of disempowering.
Powerful. And do you think that neural network or that neural firing that have sort of wired together from childhood, because what used to happen, you do well in an examination, then you go to medical school, then your parents reward you with food, and now we're going for ice cream, and now we're going to do this. So I've got an 8-year-old, and so we're trying to reward her not only with food, because we don't
Yes.
want that neural wiring that fires together for so long to say, oh, now I've got immense satisfaction because after working hard, now I'm rewarding myself with food.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think that it comes back to to the balance and to whatever we are practicing, we are reinforcing. And so if there's a variety of things that become available to you as a mechanism of reward, then beautiful. You have option. Like this satisfies you just as much as that satisfies you. And that's a beautiful thing when it is only food. And so every time you do something good, or every time you worked really hard, you're going to treat yourself with food. What's interesting from that space is that it's almost like a game you play with the self of like, oh, I worked really hard, I'm going to go have an ice cream. Why do you feel bad after you eat the ice cream then if it's a reward? There's this kind of like convoluted, contaminated reward processing like mechanism neurologically and psychologically that gets to get like teased out. Let's tease it, because if it was really a reward, then it would probably make you feel good, sustainably. But if you go for the ice cream as a reward, but then you leave feeling like crap afterward, it's like, what is that reinforcing?
Yeah, that's powerful. And then
There's a punishment energy to it also.
so if you have the ice cream and you feel great and I feel good and you carry on, and then possibly that's a good thing.
Yeah, it can be, but that's where kind of the discernment comes in of like, careful with if it's like, if you're fooling yourself, do you
Yeah.
actually feel good afterward, or are you just in a state of dissociation and numbness and like, well, that made me happy? Like, no, did it? Do you feel well now? Like, are you are you punishing yourself in some capacity afterwards or tomorrow or something like that? Like, yeah, food is just complicated. It's charged, it's a very charged substance, and I'm fascinated by it because it's like it's what sustains life. It can heal us. It can be so beautiful and medicinal and powerful and full of life force, and it can heal us, and it can also kill us.
Yeah. But don't
And
you
it,
think
it
the problem is that there's just so much food available? Because if you think about our systems, we had survival mechanisms in place, like the amygdala, like different parts like of our bodies, like dopamine, that was not only the reward molecule, but the motivation molecule. So that led us to actually staying alive, because it was
Yes.
such a huge driver to actually seek out food. But now, because there's so much food available, we're seeking it out more and more, although those primitive survival mechanisms are still significantly in play.
Yes, absolutely. And not only that, I believe that the people that are carrying the most weight are actually the ones that are starving to death from a nutrient standpoint, from a mineral like micro macro. They're starving because what they're consuming so frequently that has them, living in the body that is carrying so much weight is food like products, really, that are void of nutrients. It's just calories and foreign material in our food like products. And so those people that are carrying the most weight are actually starving for nutrients.
Got you. Got you.
It's just ironic.
Yeah. But that's this, overfed, undernourished sort of world we're living in now, that I think is
Yes.
really the story of most people out living in a Western city. But let's move to strategies and tools from mindfulness, breath work, psychedelics. Let's look at your process of engaging people. Or do you go
Yeah.
from a health coaching perspective? Do you go from a registered dietitian perspective? Just give us a bit of a
Yeah.
frame in terms of the strategies, firstly, and the tools that have been beneficial.
Sure. Yeah. So I have a program within my business called The Garden. And I love nature. I'm just it's just like the most profound teacher, holder, mother, everything. And so the garden, in my perspective, is an energetic container in which things grow. And so in this 13-week process that I take both men and women through, it's one-on-one work. And in the beginning, I'm analyzing data. So it could be stool and I'm looking at the GI, or it's blood chemistry or dried urine, really whatever they're presenting with that they're really wanting to explore. And then I create a protocol based on the data for their unique physiologies to optimize from a functional medicine perspective, to really take care of the body such that they feel comfortable coming back in, right? I give them a framework, a lifestyle, supplementation, nutrition kind of intervention. Again, it's not a rigid diet or a meal plan. It's really like based on what your body is presenting with, here's how you can eat. Here's a structure for you to hold on to and aim, towards, focus on. And then when you deviate from that because of these patterns and this way of emotional eating, we use that as absolute gold. It's golden because it's so revealing. It's so insightful in terms of the nuances or what the needs were, what the patterns are in terms of like mechanisms of regulation on the nervous system level and emotionally. And so that's in the beginning of the arc. And then weeks 5 to 9, on 3 separate occasions, they're sitting with ketamine. And I'm guiding the experience. And ketamine, they get a prescription. So it's everything is above ground. And I am holding the space. So I'm facilitating on an energetic level. And we are going into the subconscious. And so they don't touch the medicine until we've been working together for over a month. So there's safety and trust and rapport. And I've gotten to know them and their story. And so in those experiences, I can lightly and gently, but in some ways guide them into certain aspects of their story. To what I say is I'm very empathic and intuitive, and I'm able to like identify like a thread and kind of pull a little bit on the thread, and the whole ball of yarn unravels. And these huge insights or these huge understandings of both themselves or their stories or their perspectives or whatever become available to them in ways that were just buried in the subconscious mind. And then there's a lot of integration and anchoring in new ways of seeing themselves and treating themselves when the mind is more plastic, right? We're leveraging the properties of these psychedelic medicines from a neurogenesis and a neuroplasticity perspective, really with practices and rituals and daily practices and all these kinds of things to really anchor in these new ways of being with the self. Because again, everything is a direct reflection of the relationship we have with the self. So if you have a loving and compassionate relationship with yourself, you can see that the only reason you're engaging in emotional eating or any other substance is because you're trying to soothe yourself. You are in pain, trying to seek relief. If you really embody that energy, then every time you engage in a pattern such as that, you're meeting yourself with compassion. And that for me is the prerequisite to healing in every capacity. We can't shame or judge our way into a healthier body or a healthier relationship with the self. It doesn't work. I tried it. Right. And so yeah, it's this 3-month arc of like deep dive, in many ways, reprogramming from a physiological, neurological, emotional, psychological, spiritual perspective. And it's juicy and it's transformational. And the last module is called Full Bloom. And I cry every single time because I'm witnessing somebody deeply reconnect with themselves. I'm witnessing somebody who now has the capacity to hold themselves through whatever they're experiencing or feeling, navigating from that space of like connectedness to self. You can navigate anything. When we're divided, when we are our own opponent, everything is impossible. Everything feels so hard. We're at war with ourselves. We're punishing ourselves. But when you're on your own team, life is like, it becomes magical. And, this program was born out of, I created this program because this is what I needed when I was suffering. It wasn't accessible. I couldn't find anyone who could support me in my journey. And, I had an emotional relationship with food since the age of 3 years old. And I didn't understand why. I remember being a teen and just not understanding why this was the only tool in my toolbox that I had access to. I lacked a reference point of life prior to the development of this pattern that came online because it began so early. And it led me down a deep path of suffering. Like I I suffered greatly. I spent the majority of my life in isolation and in solitude. I didn't know what was wrong with me, but I was at war with my body. I was always using food to numb, and it developed, as I mentioned, into bulimia and binge eating disorder. And even after I went to treatment center for these patterns, these behaviors, I couldn't stop doing it. I wasn't engaging necessarily in bulimia anymore. I wasn't purging, but I didn't have another tool in place to help me move through big emotions other than like distracting myself with food. And it wasn't until I found psychedelics, honestly, that my story was revealed to me. I had no idea that I was molested as a child. I had no idea for 30 years that at 3 years old, between the ages of 3 and 5 years old, I was being molested repeatedly. It was completely suppressed from my memory in like every way. I had no suspicion of it, but now looking back in retrospect, everything made sense. Everything made the way the situations I was finding myself in, the people that were around me. I got breast implants and then have gotten them removed. Like everything in my life made sense once my story was revealed to me, including this relationship with food. It was just like, oh my goodness, no wonder I could not tolerate feeling, period. No wonder I was dissociated from my body. I didn't want to feel what was in there. Like, no wonder I was finding myself in situations where I was objectified by men. Like, no wonder. And so learning my story really catapulted me on this journey of liberation, and through the lens of self-compassion. For the first time in my life, it wasn't self-hatred. It was like, oh my God, that 3-year-old little girl, like, shit, like, whoa. And I just became devoted to my freedom. And in the process of that, I started to gain all this wisdom and these teachings of how to get myself out of this place, that soon became obvious that I was meant to help others do the same thing. And at this point, I was already a credentialed, dietitian. But even when I was struggling with food, I knew it was not about the food. I knew it wasn't about the food. It was like, what is hijacking me right now? Like, what is this thing, this force that all I want to do is eat all the things? Like, what is this? I don't actually want this stuff. It's crap, And so I really believe that the use of, altered states of consciousness, non-ordinary states of consciousness, whether you get there from breath or meditation or psychedelics, it just allows so many more things to come online. As the altered activity of the default mode network, the complex in the brain where the ego lives, according to Robert Carhart Harris from Imperial College. Like, it's where the ego is housed. And if that activity is altered, that means that this complex, this ego, like, who's been hogging the microphone, puts down the microphone, and all these other regions of the brain have the opportunity to communicate. And so maybe repressed memory comes forth, or alterations in perspectives of the way you see yourself or events or other people, like deep levels of self-compassion, like all these things become available. That in conjunction with a beautifully trusting, safe therapeutic alliance, that is a recipe for massive transformation. And that's what I see every day in my work.
Jillian Acosta, thank you for sharing the most incredible story and narrative, and sharing it so vulnerably, and sharing it with such deep, 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 deep compassion for yourself and for others, that you are help facilitating the journey of freedom. So well done to you, using ketamines, using psychedelics. Maybe you can just speak into, I know that you're using ketamines, you're going through the process of pre-journey work, which I think is fundamentally important, and you're a safe space for your clients and your patients, and going through their place. But, we've spoken a lot about the breath, and we've done meditation, but do you see yourself moving from ketamines to psychedelics, and using things like psilocybin, or, any others that have been sort of by the scientific community in America being legalized? Or do you just see at this stage ketamines in your work?
It's something I get asked often, and I think it's so interesting. those other substances are still Schedule 1 in the United States. So they're absolutely in phase 3 clinical trials right now, but they have not yet been legalized. But there's also a massive, they're decriminalized in certain states, Oregon and Colorado. But my perspective remains the same in such that I haven't been invited by those medicines to serve them yet. I really believe that. I had a medicine woman once share that certain substances, more synthetic substances, are tools, and more natural occurring substances are teachers. And they have spirits, the spirit of ayahuasca, the spirit of mushrooms, the spirit of peyote. They have spirits. And while I have such a deep reverence for these allies and these spirits, that I won't serve them unless I'm invited. And I haven't been invited yet. I also believe that I'm kind of meeting the world where it is. I straddle the spheres of both the psychedelic industry and the health sphere. I've spoken at medical conferences and psychedelic conferences, and I believe I'm a bridge. And so what I work with right now is it's legal. It's no less potent, but it's way more gentle in terms of a substance and an experience. And I have a theory on that, which I'm happy to share. But yeah, this is kind of where I feel I am right now. And then if I get invited by these substances, then yeah, probably I most definitely would say yes, but that hasn't happened yet. And I think one of the reasons that, I've used ketamine so much in my own journey, it's the substance that I have by far used the most, ketamine and cannabis, to tell you the truth, and always in a therapeutic and a healing container, never recreationally, neither of them. I just don't, it always sends me into kind of journey space. And so I would be the awkward one at a party, like processing my trauma in a corner or something like that. Like I just don't engage in that way. But I've used these substances the most. And in my opinion, for people that have experienced complex trauma, I think ketamine is brilliant because you don't have to wade through such a contracted nervous system. You don't have to move through all the layers of fear to get to the good stuff, because it is so gentle. And so you're able to do in some way, some not necessarily more, I don't want to compare, but like I am able to be so much more productive with ketamine than I am maybe with mushrooms, just because there's so much fear going into a mushroom ceremony because of the things that I've lived through. And mushrooms, I love mushrooms, but they always bring me into the shadow. They always bring me right into the dirt and the muck of the pain. And so I get contracted from a nervous system perspective as I go into that ceremony, that I then have to spend, who knows, half the time, 3/4 of the time moving through in order for me to get to like a breakthrough. Whereas ketamine, my heart is so open and I'm able to do massive work. It's so much more gentle. And yeah, it's really effective, especially for people that have, depression and are kind of walking around with this like dense cloud around them. Ketamine can alleviate suicidal ideation within 4 hours of a single treatment. I mean, that is profound.
Yeah.
And it's not this wonder drug. It just kind of alleviates this cloud so that you can then go into the work and like do what you need to, process what there is to process.
Brilliant. Well said. And you've obviously very, close to your heart in terms of what you're prepared to do and what you're not. So I just want to honor that and celebrate that. We'll put the show notes to Dr. Sean Thornley, who spoke about ketamines, and then Dr. Naeem Mueller, that spoke about ketamines and psychedelics, if you're listening out there. So that's really important and is available in South Africa. So Jillian Acosta, you've got a beautiful soul. I just wanted to thank you for sharing so vulnerably and just communicating something that I think is crucially important for people hearing out there. I've got Candace, I've got Carly, and I've got Chelsea in my life. And yeah, we'll have a deeper look at that in terms of really having the in-body experience. I like in-body. Yes, we've been speaking, how important it is to be mindful, but I like that somatic in-body as well, which is very, very important. Why are we eating it? Why are we eating it so fast? How much we need, and how do we feel afterwards? Can we, really listen to our feelings and hear our heart after we've done these things? So just want to declare favor and blessing over you, Jillian, that you would rise up to the very calling that I think the divine has given you, and so that you would just be this light out there. And we'll put all the links to your socials, a wonderful Instagram page as well. Just there's a sense of freedom, there's a sense of just being you, which is wonderful. So just as customary, just a last message of hope for people listening to this that have really, really struggled, in this crazy world with food, and really struggled with the psychology of food. Maybe just a short message of hope.
Mm. Yeah. We will never shame and judge our way into a different experience of life. And so if you can connect to the fact that you're engaging in these patterns because you're just seeking soothing and you have the need to feel okay, how can you meet that need? How can you allow yourself the experience of feeling okay and feeling safe in a way that doesn't cause disempowerment? It's available. And from that, everything becomes possible. It's self-compassion is the doorway.
Well done and well said. Thanks, Jillian.